All right, so you're thinking about buying property in Ontario. It can feel, well, a little overwhelming, like this giant, complicated quest. But hey, don't worry. We're here to give you the map to navigate it all. Let's dive right in.
So, is this you? Are you thinking about buying a property in Ontario? It's a huge step for sure. Doesn't matter if it's your very first home or maybe an investment property. It's totally normal to feel a little bit lost at the start.
And you know what? Thinking of it as a quest is actually kind of perfect, because every great quest needs a map, right? Well, consider this your guide. We're going to walk you through all the essentials of Ontario real estate, point out the major landmarks, and yeah, even warn you about a few of the pitfalls you might encounter along the way.
Okay, so every quest has to begin somewhere. And for this one, it all starts with choosing your, well, let's call it your castle. Now, you've probably heard the word condo a million times, but what you might not know is that not all condos are created equal. There are actually a few different types, and trust me, the differences between them are super important.
First up, we've got the standard condominium. This is the one you're probably most familiar with. You own your specific unit, your apartment, but you also own a piece of all the common stuff. We're talking the lobby, the gym, maybe a pool. The two are completely tied together.
All right, now here's where it gets interesting. There's something called a common element condominium. This one's a little different. See, you don't own a unit in the typical sense. You actually own your own freehold house, but that house is tied to some shared property, like maybe a private road or a little park that everyone in the community chips in to maintain.
Or, hey, maybe you're the type who wants to build your dream home from the ground up. Well, that's where a vacant land condominium comes in. You're not buying a house that's already built. No, you're buying a plot of land inside a planned development. You get to build whatever you want. And just like the others, everyone contributes to the shared infrastructure. The roads, the sewers, all that important stuff.
And last but not least, we have the leasehold condominium. This one has a really unique setup. Get this, you own the building, the physical structure, but you don't own the land it's sitting on. Instead, that land is leased, usually for a very long time. Now, the big plus here is that it can make the purchase price a lot lower. But just remember, part of your monthly fees is basically rent for the land.
Okay, so let's just quickly pull all that together. You've got four main flavors: owning just the unit, owning a whole house that's tied to shared land, owning a plot of land to build on, or owning a building on land you don't own. Getting your head around these differences is absolutely the first step to figuring out which path is the right one for you.
So, you've picked a type of condo. You've found a place you love. What's next? Well, now it's time to look under the hood. You've got to perform what I like to call a financial X-ray to see what's really going on with the building's money.
And the single most important tool for this X-ray? It's called the status certificate. Seriously, think of it as a complete health report for the entire building. It's going to tell you everything: the state of their finances, if there are any lawsuits, and, this is a big one, if there are any huge expensive repairs coming down the pike.
And listen, this isn't something that can wait. There's a strict timeline here. Once it's requested, the condo corporation has exactly 10 calendar days to get you that status certificate, not a day more. You can bet your lawyer and your real estate agent will be watching that clock like a hawk.
Now, one of the most critical things you'll find in that health report is the status of the reserve fund. What's that? Just think of it as the building's emergency savings account. It's mandatory, and it's set aside specifically for those big-ticket items. We're talking a new roof, new elevators, the stuff that costs a ton of money.
But what happens if that savings account is looking a little thin? Well, if a huge repair comes up and there's not enough cash in the reserve fund to cover it, the board has to do something called a special assessment. And that's exactly what it sounds like. Every single owner gets hit with a bill for their share of the difference. And we're not talking small change here. It can easily run into thousands of dollars.
Okay, so it's not all about the money, right? When you buy a condo, you're not just buying property. You're joining a community. And that community has its own little government and, you guessed it, its own set of laws. It's so important to understand how the whole thing works before you jump in.
And here's a really important distinction you need to know: bylaws versus rules. They sound similar, but they're not. Think of it this way. Bylaws are about how the condo is run. The big stuff, like how the board gets elected or how fees are collected. These have to be approved by all the owners. Rules, on the other hand, are about how you have to live. These are the day-to-day things, like pet restrictions or noise limits. The board usually gets to make these on its own.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. What if you're not looking at an existing property? What if you want to buy something brand spanking new? Well, buying pre-construction directly from a builder, that's a whole other ballgame. It comes with a totally different set of rules and paperwork.
So, with a new build, you won't get a status certificate. Instead, the key document is the disclosure statement. This is basically the builder's Bible for the project. It lays out everything you need to know, the proposed budget, all the rules and bylaws, and exactly what features and finishes are going into your new place.
Hey, look, it's that number 10 again. But this time, it's all about protecting you, the buyer. In Ontario, after you sign that agreement for a new build and get the disclosure statement, you get a 10-day cooling-off period. It is your absolute legal right to walk away from the deal within those 10 days, for any reason at all. No questions asked.
And another big perk with new homes in Ontario is the warranty. It's mandatory, and it's managed by an organization called Terrian. It's broken down into tiers. You get 1 year of coverage for general workmanship, then you get 2 years of coverage for the important systems, think electrical, plumbing, that kind of stuff. And then the big one, a full 7 years of protection against any major structural problems.
So, you've done it. You're an owner. Awesome. But what if you decide you want to rent your place out and become a landlord? Doesn't matter if that was the plan all along or if your life just changed. The moment you decide to rent, you've got a whole new world of rules and responsibilities to learn. All right, let's clear something up that trips a lot of people up, the difference between an assignment and a sublet. An assignment is permanent. Your tenant is moving out for good and finds someone new to completely take over their lease. A sublet, on the other hand, is temporary. Your tenant rents the unit out for a little while, but fully intends to come back. Legally, these two things are worlds apart.
Now, as a landlord, when can you enter the unit? Your rights here are very, very specific. You can only go in without 24 hours notice in a handful of situations. We're talking a real emergency, like a fire or a flood. Or if your tenant is standing right there and says, sure, come on in. The only other time is to show the unit to a potential new tenant, but only after your current tenant has already given their notice to move out.
For pretty much everything else, the rule is crystal clear. Whether it's to do a repair, an inspection, or show the place to a potential buyer, you must give 24 hours written notice. And the entry has to happen between 8 in the morning and 8 at night. No exceptions.
And there you have it. We've been on quite the journey, haven't we? From figuring out what kind of castle you want, all the way to the rules of being a landlord. Now, is this everything you'll ever need to know? Of course not. But you now have a really solid map for the road ahead. You are so much better equipped to go out there and start writing your own property story. So, the only question left is, what story will your journey tell?